So we're going to focus on the how useful question. Obviously they're cutting the grass outside the window again, but I'll try and talk over that. So this is an 8-mark question. It's actually on both, it's on two papers. It's on the Nazi Germany paper and on the medicine and the Western Front. So obviously in total that's 16 marks, which is quite a lot. So it's well worth you just making sure you're absolutely clear about this question. So as soon as you see the two words, how useful, you've got to be clear in your mind and think about this. Tap. Okay, so you must try and tap the source. So the T stands for the type of source. What is it? Is it a photo? Is it a diary? Is it a letter? The author, the A from the tap, stands for author. Who made the source? When did they make it? Is it from the time? Was it more modern? The P stands for purpose. Why do you think it was made? What does it tell you? Could it have been produced for propaganda reasons? So I'm going to give you an example from Nazi Germany. So it says here, how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the way Hitler came to power? So obviously you've got a text source, source A, and you have a visual source, source B. Now on the tap bit, it's obviously these are the three most common sources that are going to be in the exam. So a diary, so try and think about in terms of usefulness, why might a diary be useful? So positive thing would be it's very personal. You know, people are going to write down their feelings, what they're really thinking, because they think it's private. However, the downside of a diary is it's only from one person's perspective. You know, does it show you the whole picture about what was going on? Books, I think the key thing with a book is working out when it was published. You know, books are good because they're generally accurate, they're checked for mistakes, they have to go through a legal process, etc. However, they could be very opinionated. Just make sure you check again the title. So the key things with the books are, when was it published? Make sure you check the title. Photos, there's bound to be a photo in the exam. Photos are very useful because it visualizes and it enables you to describe what you can see. However, you have to be careful with photos, a bit like any profile picture on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. It's Facebook, Snapchat. So, you know, who has taken a picture? Why have they taken it? What angle have they taken a picture from? So, photos are very useful, but you have to be careful with them. So let's just go back to this question here. So what I've done, I've highlighted, so from source A. So source A is a book called Berlin Stories. The author is a guy called Christopher Isherwood. Now I don't know anything about him apart from what it says here. He was a British journalist living in Berlin. So what I would say about that is obviously, you know, he was a foreigner living in a country where he was forced to report, and he was obviously published after the war. So he'd obviously just defeated Germany, Hitler was dead. So it's not clear about whether you know, he was taking notes here, but we can presume as a journalist he would have been taking quite accurate notes. So it is useful. It's from a perspective, from a British perspective, so you could argue both ways whether that was useful or not. It's useful that he was a foreigner, but maybe he didn't quite understand what was going in Germany at the time because he wasn't German. I've picked out some bits in bold. So what it's telling us about the way he came to power is the Chancellor Brüning, nobody was listening to him, his orders were not obeyed, Berlin was in a state of war, there's hatred everywhere, people are getting attacked by knives all over the place. And then his final comment was, what these swine need is a man with hair on his chest. So it tells me that basically Germans were looking for a strong figure, somebody who was willing to wear a uniform. And you can obviously see that, and source C, that person is Hitler. So source B is a cartoon, published at the time. So that's quite useful because it reflects how people were feeling at the time. You know, cartoons are interesting as sources because they generally would exaggerate what is going on, but do sometimes tell a story that's difficult to tell. So in this case, what it's showing is obviously Hitler being lifted up by President Hindenburg and the Chancellor von Papen, and it's entitled The Temporary Triangle. In the background there you can see the SA massing behind him, so which again shows like it's people power bringing him in. But terms of how useful it is, obviously it's coming from again from a British perspective, from a political magazine called Punch, which is quite satirical. So there is a genuine point there, but does it really reflect what was going on at the time? So both sources, you have to sort of highlight the pros and cons.